I'm a book addict. I love books. I read books, devour books, review books, buy books, share books, give books. I just am in love with books. It's my positive addiction. I looked around and say, well, how do I get my book noticed? I think it's a good book. And then I realized, I have to learn something called marketing. And I have to learn something called copyright. I would tell that younger Joe, you just keep going because you don't know what treasures await. As long as you keep getting up and writing and submitting and moving forward and promoting, you will achieve success. You will achieve it along the way by the nature of the daily accomplishment. Success is assured. It's pretty much guaranteed, especially if you remember that what you're doing is what you want to do. So just by doing it, you're a success.
Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Dr. Joe Vitale. Joe is the president of Hypnotic Marketing, a marketing consulting firm. He's been called the Buddha of the internet for his combination of spirituality and marketing acumen. His articles have been widely read, and he's got clients including the Red Cross, PBS, Herman's Children's Hospital, and a bunch of other small and large international businesses. He's a great speaker, an accomplished author. He's got a bunch of books that he's published that have done really well. I mean, I just feel like on Amazon, I'm just scrolling and it's like, oh, another book, hundreds of reviews. This book, thousands of reviews. This book, hundreds of reviews. So there's a lot to unpack here on just the book side of things, the business side of things, marketing, copywriting, hypnotic writing, just a lot of different kind of interesting elements and routes that we can go. So we'll see which way we go. But Dr. Joe, welcome. Great to have you here.
Of course, I love talking about books and self-publishing. So this is my crowd. This is my moment. I've been looking forward to this.
Don't blow it.
All right.
So I guess, that's a great place to start. Why books? Why are they such a big part of your business, your brand, all that good stuff?
I'm a book addict. I love books. I read books, devour books, review books, buy books, share books, give books. I just am in love with books. It's my positive addiction, if you will. And I've been that way since I was a kid. Once I discovered books, they became my best friend. And the library growing up was my best friend. And then later in years, bookstores became my best friend. And now, of course, I'm in a position where I create my own libraries and have them all over the place. And I've given away libraries worth of books. I just believe that has been my life calling, my life mission, and my life pursuit. That is my passion. I love books.
That's cool. How have you sold so many copies of your books? And you've done it in a bunch of different, that's what I think is really interesting is it's not like, some people will have one massive hit and no other books, some books that haven't really done. It just feels like you've had success with a bunch of different books. How have you done it? How have you sold so many copies?
Well, first of all, they all have not sold a whole lot of books. I've written over 80 books. Some people have said it's 90. I actually don't know. I write the books. I don't count them. So somebody else says I've written over 80 books. Obviously, they all have not stood up and barked and got attention, but quite a few of them have. One book got me into the movie The Secret. That was The Attractor Factor. But The Attractor Factor began as a self-published book even before that. So there's stories with all of them. But to answer your question, I learned in 1984, when my first book was published, that I had better learn what was called marketing, or anything I wrote was going to die on the vine. Most books quietly die. They're published and they die and they disintegrate. They're gone unless somebody champions them. So I learned marketing. And for the book I mentioned, The Attractor Factor, when it came out, I pulled all stops out. I learned everything I could about copywriting, publicity, advertising, and the internet was coming around at that point. And I used all of it. I wrote news releases and sent them to the media. I wrote sales letters and sent them to my list. I did wild publicity techniques in order to get attention. I told the press I was the media underdog because at that point, the Pope had come out with a book and the latest Harry Potter book was out. This is around 2005, 2006. And I said, here I am alone in my house with my computer in Texas, one individual solo man going up against media empires, including the Catholic Church and against the Harry Potter universe. And I actually won media attention doing it. And that book beat both of those authors and became a #1 bestseller out of all books, all categories, making history at the time. So how do I do this? It is with intense persistent, wide-ranging marketing. And I learned that you've got to do it or your book's not going to last.
Man, that's so good. There's like about seven follow-up questions I have for that. So I guess maybe let's start with this. You talked about how, we always talk about, hey, a book is like this key that opens the door to Narnia, right? Yeah. It's this magical world that exists for published authors, and it helps open the door. You mentioned that with the attractor factor in this, and use it in that helping unlock the door of getting in The Secret. And then obviously that movie's done really well. How did that happen? And any takeaways or learning from for folks of like unlocking opportunities like that through a book?
Boy, there's so much to say there. It's like you just said you had 7 questions from what I said. I have 7 comments from what you just said. So where do I even begin? First of all, Rhonda Byrne was the woman who created the movie The Secret, and she lived at the time in Hawaii. And a friend of hers read my book, The Attractor Factor. She bought it probably from Amazon. She read the book, liked the book, and handed it to Rhonda. Rhonda read the book and was inspired, and she called me up. And back then you can get me on the phone. I answered my own phone. And she called me up and said she was in Australia. She was going to make a movie. It was going to be about the law of attraction, and she'd like me to be in it. Well, I was hearing from people who had wild dreams and wild claims, but never followed through. So I was polite, but I figured I'm never going to hear from this woman again. And a month after that call, she did send me a trailer to the movie, and it was so good. I said, oh my God, if the movie's going to be this good, I demand to be in it. And long story short, it's because I wrote a book and she absolutely loved it when somebody handed it to her. And that led to an invitation that I said yes to, which led to The Secret. And of course, the rest is history from that aspect. The thing that I tell people is I love books, and books are like a sophisticated business card. And in the early days, I said it was one of the best ways to get more business. But today, I would not say that, because today, I don't know if you know the statistics. Back when I was first starting out, I was appalled to hear there was 1,000 books coming out every week. 1,000 books every week? This is overwhelming. How do you stand out? Now it's 4,000 books a day. 4,000 books a day. So you come out with a book thinking you're going to get noticed, you're going to get all these people giving you business cards or giving you business, or you're going to be invited to be in the equivalent of The Secret. The chances of that happening are far slimmer now, unless you are doing what we've already talked about: intense, relentless, persistent, creative marketing. That still holds true. And if you don't do it, you will be swallowed up by the 4,000 books coming out every day.
So let's unpack that a little bit, like the intense, consistent, creative marketing. You kind of, just on a flyby, you mentioned some of those things of like the publicity, the newsletters, the PR. I think you maybe even said direct mail, like all those different things.
Yes.
Maybe how do you look at this strategically? And then what are tactically 1 or 2 things that have moved the most books?
Those are great questions. So I'm going to answer it by adapting it to today's world, so you have more of a sense of what I'm doing as an author today. First of all, I am very active on social media. So you can find videos by me and about me on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever the social medias are today. I'm doing it actively. Once or twice a day, I'm posting on Instagram, for example, and I'm Dr. Joe Vitale there. So Dr. Joevitale, and you can follow me, see what I'm doing. And a lot of it is for branding. A lot of it is to keep people aware of who I am and what I do. And a lot of it is about latest books. Like my most recent book is called Unexpected Kindness. It's a self-published book. I have done a lot of Instagram videos. I've done a bunch of social media posts where there's a quote or an excerpt or a testimonial or a review, something about the book that I'm posting. All of this is to get attention for the book. So I'm doing social media. That's really important. We all need to have our list of followers. The list has always been gold. Way back in the early days when there was no internet, but we were doing direct mail and people were putting stamps on envelopes to send out their sales letter to people, they were building a list. What you need even today, and maybe more importantly today, is a list of followers. That's where you're going to write to these people and say, you're on my list because you like what I'm doing. Well, I just came out with a book I like. Check it out, blah, blah, blah. I'm still doing that. At this point, I have 100 or more list, and they're all topic specific. And there is one for the new book, Unexpected Kindness. I've sent people to unexpectedkindnessbook.com, and it's worth people going to go check it out to see how I've done it. There's a little video there. There's a little sign up there. And when they sign up, they go on that list. So I am always doing the list business there. The thing that people do, which is related to social media, and I do too, is they have a special interest group on Facebook. Facebook, you can create your own group or you can find groups. So when I was doing the Unexpected Kindness book, I went looking for all the people related to kindness. Who are the people out there that are already talking about it? Like there's a massive group for random acts of kindness. Well, I went to them to say, I'm coming out with a kindness book, and I posted in their group. They're also, of course, on Instagram and other places, so I would follow them, link to them in any way that I could. I'm also doing the networking. I found out through the grapevine that there is a kindness ambassador for the United Nations. And when I found out who that was, in this case, it turned out to be somebody I had met and knew from years before. I told her I was coming out with Unexpected Kindness. Would you read it? And if you liked it, would you endorse it? And that ended up being not only an endorsement but the forward to the book. So these are all the little things that come to mind that I'm telling you that I'm doing even today, and everybody listening or watching can do on their own. These still work. I'm still a big believer of publicity, but I hadn't really done anything for Unexpected Kindness, the recent book, yet. I wrote a book on P.T. Barnum. P.T. Barnum, the circus and museum giant, an entrepreneur of Titan level from the 1800s. I wrote a book on him called There's a Customer Born Every Minute. And at the beginning of my book, I quote him 5 days before he died on his deathbed. He said he owed his wealth and his success to the newspapers of the world, because at that time, that's how he got publicity. He fed the editors, the reporters stories. They ran those stories, and those stories is what told the masses, oh, P.T. Barnum has Jumbo the elephant. P.T. Barnum has Tom Thumb. P.T. Barnum has a Fiji mermaid, and they would go see it. So he was leveraging publicity from that time period. When my book, The Attractor Factor, came out, and I said I was leveraging publicity by saying I was up against the Pope and the Catholic Church and up against the Rowling book and Harry Potter empire, it was positioning me as the underdog, and I sent it to the media hoping that they would see a story here, and they did. And when they ran the story, I reached a whole different audience that probably never heard of me before because I was leveraging publicity. So that's another thing that I have done, and if I thought about it more, there'd be other stories. I haven't done it recently, but those are some of the things I'm up to.
That's cool. And I love, because obviously you've been publishing books for a long time. So I love seeing how some of those things have changed, right? You talked about the newsletters and yes, paid and direct mail and a lot of that stuff in the early days. And then you're like, hey, what I'm doing right now is social media. And then you said the timeless thing, kind of the through line in controlling your list and having email lists and interested customers. Is there anything else that you've seen that's been kind of timeless from book 1 to book 80 that's kind of always worked?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. I'm impressed. Well, first of all, I mentioned my book on P.T. Barnum. There's a Customer Born Every Minute. The subtitle was about the 10 tried and true principles that worked for Barnum, worked for all the Barnum-like characters, and still work today. So my focus on the 10 principles in There's a Customer Born Every Minute were the universals. When he was going after publicity, he was just using newspapers because that's what they had at the time. You still go after publicity today. Only today you can leverage the internet and all that it means to get the word out in an even bigger way, and an even easier way, and an even faster way than P.T. Barnum could have done way back in the 1800s. So there's key principles like that. Another key principle that was true for him and is still true today, and I hit on it a little bit when I talked about the kindness ambassador for the UN, is networking, is learning how to network with people who are in the groups that would be interested in your book. Much like when I was coming out with a kindness book, Unexpected Kindness, and I start looking around, who are the leaders in kindness? Who are the influencers? Who are the people writing blogs about kindness? Who else came out with kindness books? And I network with them. I write them directly. I go to their blogs, I go to their Facebook groups, or in the case of the UN person, I write her an email directly. And what am I doing? I'm networking with these people to look for a win-win. The win-win is a philosophy that I have in business. I don't want to just win. I want to win. I want the person endorsing me to win, and I want the people buying the book to win. I look for a win-win-win, which is basically another principle that you can look at here, because too many people are cutthroat in business. This was maybe more true 100 years ago, but I really think it's true today too, where everybody's out for themselves. And I learned from Dale Carnegie, and I learned from Napoleon Hill, and I learned from the success literature of the world when I was reading their books that I need to be looking out for them in order to end up benefiting myself. So all of these are principles that are timeless.
That's great. I love those. And you know, the Zig Ziglar quote, best way to get what you
Yeah.
want is to help enough other people get what they want. and doing that through
That's
the
it.
triple win, kind of as you described there. So man, there's so many just different threads, and it's cool seeing how you practice this as well. I pulled up the kindness book, unexpected. I think it was, you said unexpected kindness.
Unexpected kindness.
And then unexpectedkindnessbook.com. That's the URL.
That's the website for the book, unexpectedkindnessbook.com.
I already closed it out, so I don't have it up. But I was just looking at it just a second ago when you were mentioning that, and it's cool just even seeing how you've structured that page, how you've laid out that page, and then the PT Barnum one is the book sounds really interesting. I'm like, I have to get that after this because you talked about publicity, and so I can see kind of the parallels.
Yes.
I mean, obviously he was a master of publicity and creating interest and getting in newspapers and stuff like that. Talk to me about so it looks like just from Amazon, it looks like one of your more successful books is Zero Limits. Has that been the most successful up there?
Well, that's a good question. In the self-improvement category, I would say Zero Limits and the one I mentioned, the Attractor Factor, or kind of neck and neck. The Attractor Factor is about the law of attraction, and it was very fitting that Rhonda read it and asked me to be in the movie, which was about the law of attraction. So the Attractor Factor, the movie The Secret, they married well. And so I was appropriate to be in the movie, and I'm forever grateful I was in it because I liked the movie whether I was in it or not. Zero Limits is a completely different kind of book. And in fact, it's more of an advanced book where the law of attraction is about attracting what you want. And any criticism that came about The Secret was about it was too material. Well, Zero Limits is all about the spiritual. It is a very simple but miraculously powerful way to heal the inside of you to change the outer world. The world will reflect what you've changed on the inside. And very quickly, at the end, at the essence of Zero Limits is the story, the true story of a therapist who helped heal an entire ward of mentally ill criminals in a state hospital in Hawaii. And he did it not by any traditional therapy. He did it with this weird technique that I write about in the book, where he changes himself. He changes his perceptions of what he's seen. And as he changes the perceptions in him, the people, the place that's around him reflects the change. He was able to help heal this ward of mentally ill criminals, remember, criminals who were sedated or shackled on a daily basis. And he did it by working inside himself. And he did a method called Ho'oponopono. Zero Limits is that book describing that method, and I co-authored it with that therapist. He has since passed on, and we went on and did seminars together. I wrote 3 follow-up books to that one. I would say there is a whole movement behind Zero Limits because of the therapist, because of the story, because of the magic and ease of that of the method Ho'oponopono.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so
really
that's pretty
cool.
popular.
I hope you're loving this episode so far. So if you're serious about writing and publishing your book, we would love to chat with you and help create a custom plan. All right, so all you need to do right now is go to selfpublishing.com/schedule. Schedule a 45-minute consultation with one of the experts on my team. All right, let's implement what you're learning in this episode and let's see how we can help with your book. Go to selfpublishing.com/schedule. Why do you think that book sold so many copies? I mean, it's sitting right at, as of the time of this recording, about 2,500 ratings and reviews on Amazon. So it's obviously done really well. Why do you think it's gotten so many reviews and sold so many copies?
All right, let's go back to marketing here. When I discovered Ho'oponopono and I discovered the therapist, Dr. Hulen, I told him, this story is so amazing. Somebody needs to write a book. And I said, I'll do it. I'd be glad to do it. And we worked out an arrangement and I ended up writing this book. But before I actually wrote the book, I wrote maybe a 500-word article about the method. And I think it was called The Most Unusual Therapist in the World, something like that. And it was the essence of what I just told you about. There was this therapist at the Hawaii State Hospital. He used this unusual method called Ho'oponopono. And I sent it to my list at the time, which was a couple thousand names. It wasn't gigantic at that time, but I sent it to my list and I issued it to it was out for redistribution. I sent it out to other blogs, to e-zines, to magazines. I just used the service that was around in 2005 to distribute it. That's the word. I was distributing the article. As it turns out, that article rang the bell. That article was so powerful and so inspiring and so different that people passed it to other people. I still remember Jack Canfield, who's another successful author, and he's in the movie The Secret. He wrote to me and he said, 25 different people forwarded this article to me. That article actually made the book a bestseller because it was already listed on Amazon. I had a publisher who was going to publish it. It was listed on Amazon, but the book wasn't written. The book wasn't written. It was listed on Amazon. I had issued the 500-word article because I was inspired and I was excited. I was following my passion. It ignited interest in all these people, and people kept sharing it to other people. And then they would go and pre-order it on Amazon. Before the book was written, let alone before I turned it into the publisher, it was a bestseller on Amazon from pre-orders alone.
That's wild.
Now, that's a combat. That's hitting, lightning strike at that point. But the point is, I have written articles about books to promote books throughout my career. Early on, in particular, it was one of the marketing tools that always worked for me because people were hungry for more content at that time. Again, today, in today's world, we got more of a challenge. We got more of a competition going on. It's still valid. We should still do it, but you're going to have to really work hard to make your excerpt, your article, whatever the promo is, that piece of content, stand up and deliver. I did make something that stood up and delivered, and it did get passed around, but the competition was a little less than I think it is today, but it's still a valid tool to use.
That's really interesting. And just from observation, I mean, kind of hearing the way that you approach things, I mean, you're obviously a very prolific copywriter and very good at spotting hooks and coming up with provocative hooks, interesting hooks. Like even you just said the article of this unusual therapist in Hawaii and the approach that he discovered. I mean, it's just such a big kind of intriguing, provocative hook. I'm seeing that as a theme kind of in a lot of the marketing that you do and how you position books and all that. I know you've got a book on this, and I'm assuming it's the same principle, but I haven't read it, so I don't want to assume. Hypnotic Writing. Is that the process of doing that? And if so, what does that look like? And how can authors use kind of that hypnotic writing process to persuade interest in their books, all that?
Wonderful questions, great insight, and it's a great opportunity for me to expand on this. First of all, when my first book was published in 1984, I don't think I knew what the word marketing meant. I don't think I had a definition for entrepreneur. I hadn't looked at publicity or advertising or copywriting. I'm not even sure I knew what copywriting was back then, 1984. But when my book came out and flopped, and I looked around and saying, well, how do I get my book noticed? I think it's a good book. And then I realized, I have to learn something called marketing, and I have to learn something called copywriting. Well, I do what I do with everything. I went to books. I went to the public library back then, and I just looked up all those categories, and I started devouring everything. And there was one book in particular, the Robert Collier letter book, that first came out in the 1930s. I found a 1950 edition. Turns out Robert Collier had been a metaphysical writer. I knew his metaphysical books. I read them when I was a teenager in the 1960s. I didn't know he was a copywriter. I didn't know he was a businessman, an entrepreneur. So when I read the Robert Collier letter book, the lights went on in my head. I had all kind of dopamine and who knows what kind of neurons were firing fireworks because suddenly I got alive and I got excited. And I said, it all comes down to this writing, this persuasive writing. And so I started a deep dive into that, and I ended up creating something called Hypnotic Writing. Hypnotic Writing was my title. It was my first ebook. I self-published it. Back then we had Kinko's, which was the corner print shop. And I go over there and get a spiral bound version of Hypnotic Writing. And I had also learned that if I want to sell books, I should be in front of audiences. And so I started speaking to groups. And believe me, I was insecure uneducated, terrified, sweating bullets, almost passing out in front of 6 people who would be in my little group. But I'd have Hypnotic Writing as my spiral bound manuscript, and I would sell it. And I would say it's $50, which is a hell of a lot of money back then for a spiral bound book done at Kinko's for a couple dollars. But I learned this is what you do. And I created Hypnotic Writing as a way to teach people how to be more persuasive in their headlines, their book titles, the back cover copy, the sales letter, or the websites for the book themselves. You have to start thinking differently. Most of us are in love with our book. We just came out with a book. We want the world to know. We think it's fantastic. Hey, look what I wrote. And the world goes, well, I don't care about that unless you make them care. And you make them care with things like the headline. Hypnotic Writing, I invented it. That was my name. I was interested in hypnosis. I was interested in writing. It sounded like a nice, unusual, captivating, curiosity-provoking blend. And so suddenly Hypnotic Writing is born. And it was so successful, I came out with Advanced Hypnotic Writing, Hypnotic Selling Secrets, Hypnotic Marketing, and I named my company Hypnotic Marketing. It all stemmed from me looking at how do I write in a way that engages people. Let me give you an example that might illustrate this even more for people, since everybody here is interested in books. I researched a fellow by the name of Bruce Barton, and everybody just went, who? Shrugged their shoulders. They don't know who Bruce Barton was. He was the founder of BBDO, one of the largest advertising agencies in the world in 1919. He had ran for Congress. He was a celebrity business person. He wrote a best-selling book that's still in print today called The Man Nobody Knows, which is about Jesus as a businessman. So Bruce Barton just was really big in the world, and then he was gone. When he died in 1967, everybody had already forgotten him. And here I am going, who was this guy? So I did all this research on Bruce Barton, and I was going to come out with a book on Bruce Barton, and I've got my book on Bruce Barton finished. And I thought, I can't call it Bruce Barton. Nobody will buy it. And so I had to think like a marketer. I had to think with the Hypnotic Writing in my mind and thinking what title would be sincere and appropriate, yet captivating. And I remember I had researched everything, and I was kind of writing the book on the secrets I had learned from him about being in business. And so I ended up calling it The 7 Lost Secrets of Success. Now, people will buy The 7 Lost Secrets of Success over Bruce Barton, a biography. And to make this even more relevant, I created 6 titles and put them on an index card. So I had The 7 Lost Secrets of Success, Bruce Barton, The Lost Genius, and a few other titles. And I went into a bookstore. One of the busiest, I was living in Houston, Texas at the time, the old Alabama Theater. I went in there and I went to the people that were selling books, not buying books, but the ones selling books, because they were seeing all the books that were being bought. They were the ones that were selling the best. And I said, you don't know me, you don't know my book, but here is 7 titles or 6 titles, whatever it was. Which one would sell? And they all pointed to The 7 Lost Secrets of Success. That became the title of the book. So I had to learn hypnotic writing. I had to learn about marketing. I had to learn about copywriting. And then I had to apply it to my books. Even my book, Unexpected Kindness. The original title was something like Kindness or Stories of Kindness. And I thought that's not very captivating. There's lots of books on kindness. But when I started thinking, well, the stories are really about the unexpected kindness that happened to me. And then I thought, Unexpected Kindness is a good title because you're wondering what was unexpected about it. What was the kindness and why was it unexpected? So that became the title. And it is a far better title than just a plain one on kindness.
That's really cool. I like that a lot. Thanks for sharing that. And just a really applicable example as well. We talk about this concept of, it sounds, kind of similar, and of chocolate covered broccoli, which is sell them what they want, give them what they need.
Right.
And I love that, like, just that with that Bruce book that you mentioned, it's like, okay, this is the thing that they're interested in. And then this is the substance that's going to be really helpful for them. And marrying those two in a way, because you can't change someone's life with a book if they don't buy it. Right. And so it's making it provocative and attractive enough that they buy it, and substance enough that they love it. And so I guess I'd love for you to walk through maybe, I'll just tee up 1 or 2 other examples, because I think this is just so important, is how do you do? So there's probably a lot of people listening to this, watching this right now and thinking, all right, cool. But I've heard you say a couple of examples. How can I do this for my book? So let's take maybe one book on leadership, self-development, kind of basic broad book, or I'll throw out one as just a random on patio furniture and how to, so like these are 2 very different topics. You can choose one or the other. How would you take that through the process of making that more interesting and more hypnotic with a title or with a hook?
Let me give you an answer with a true story. We have a French bulldog that's a puppy, and we take her over to doggy daycare once a week, which is her summer camp, and she really looks forward to it. And I got to know the people over there. And there was one girl who I saw her stomach was getting bigger and bigger, and I thought, well, she's been partying and drinking too much beer, until I realized, oh, she's pregnant. And so I talked to her about it one point, and I said, "Are you excited? You afraid?" And she says, "Well, I'm really nervous." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm in for, and I don't want to raise the child incorrectly." And I said, "Well, have you ever heard of the library or a bookstore?" I said, "You're not the first in history to go through all of this." And so we had a little chuckle. But then I went back to my computer and I went on Amazon and I started looking at all the parenting books. There's a lot of parenting books, but I bought one. Why did I buy this one book? All the titles were about being a good parent or doing sensible parenting or this, that, the other. Probably all good. Maybe one of them is legendary in terms of a parenting book. But there was one book that was called How Not to Raise an Asshole. How Not to Raise an Asshole. And I thought, that's the book. That's the book. So I bought it. I gave it to her, and I wasn't sure that she would even read it. But the next time I saw her, she had already read a third of the book, and she texted me that she was reading more of it and really loving it. Why did I buy that book? The title suggested that this was going to be different than all the other parenting books. It also suggested there might be a little bit of humor in this, which people want when this sometimes too serious topic. So when it comes to the patio furniture, for example, I'd be looking for, how is this book on patio furniture different from all the other books on patio furniture? And what I typically do when I have a new project, including the kindness book, I go on Amazon and I type in those keywords, patio furniture, to see what's already there. I want to see what's been done before, because there's probably a lot of books on surprising amounts of different angles and variations and different ways of looking at it. And maybe there's a book exactly like the one I was going to do. And if so, I'll look at the book. And if it's really like what I was going to do, I won't do mine. But if I look at all the patio furniture books and I realize, well, mine is really about the healing quality of adding gems to the patio furniture tabletops. And suddenly I have a completely different book that nobody else has. And of course, I need a better title than that, but it would be the general nature of that. I have created a patio furniture book that is different. And it would probably appeal first to the patio furniture people, and second to anybody that's into healing, anybody that's into gemstones, anybody who's into a different kind of tabletop patio furniture, because now we have gemstones in it. We have the great story that, hey, these could help heal you. If nothing else, they're conversation pieces. Look at this. The same thing if we went in personal development or we went in leadership. And of course, there's tens of thousands of books throughout history on both of those categories. And I'd have to look at that and go, okay, how is mine different? How is the leadership books that are already out there, how are they lacking? What are they lacking? So I need to do the research to find out, has this been done? If it has been done, where are they not shining? Where can it be something different, or how can I be somewhat different? And then make it different. It's a little bit like the 7 Lost Secrets of Success. Instead of saying Bruce Barton, a biography, which at that time nobody would buy, maybe today because of my book, which by the way, I didn't say, 7 Lost Secrets of Success was my first international bestseller. There was one company who bought 20,000 copies of it for everybody in their business. And I was doing early radio shows and I was rough at doing it, talking about the 7 Lost Secrets of Success. People would hear me on the radio as they're driving out of town, turn around, go to whatever bookstore I'm at doing book signings and buy copies of the book. By shifting the focus from Bruce Barton to Lost Secrets, I made something magnetic. I made something hypnotic.
And how'd that company buy 20,000 copies? Did they just reach out? They heard you on the radio, or was there
they
anything
had
special
interviewed, because this was almost 20 years ago. Well, first of all, I spoke for the company. It was a network marketing company in Houston, and they had a monthly audio cassette that went out, and I had spoken to them. But I don't know if they had heard me on the radio or it was from that. But the owner of the company said he wanted 19,500 copies. He had 19,500 members, and he wanted every single one of them to have a book. I also made my first worldwide tour as a result of that payday. I got to go overseas. It was cool.
That's awesome. Well, Dr. Joe, next to last question for you. Knowing what you know now, what would you say to the Joe of many years ago and many books ago before you'd written your first book? And maybe all the other Joes out there who are thinking about writing their first book?
I would be assuring and comforting, and I would say there is a secret to success, and it beats talent, it beats luck, it beats connections, it beats having more money, it beats all the things that people think they need to have in order to be a success. And it's really summed up in one word, and that's persistence. As long as you keep getting up and writing and submitting and moving forward and promoting, you will achieve success. You will achieve it along the way by the nature of the daily accomplishment. But as you keep doing it, success is assured. It's pretty much guaranteed, especially if you remember that what you're doing is what you want to do. So just by doing it, you're a success. And then as you continue doing it, you're planting seeds for future crops. And as you continue doing it, more and more people, the connections are being made. I gave a talk when I was in Thailand about the side benefits that come from going for your dream. I just wanted to be an author. I didn't think about being in movies or all these other things that have come to me as a result of being an author. But by going for the main dream, all these side benefits showed up. So by taking persistent action every day, even when it looks like, some days are going to suck and doesn't look like this is going anywhere, I would tell that younger Joe, you can just keep going because you don't know what treasures await.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Dr. Joe, this has been amazing. Really, really fun. Very insightful. Where can people go to find out more about you, to buy your books, to check out more about what you're up to?
Well, I'm not hiding, so I'm all over the internet. I would say the main website would be mrfire.com. It's the one I started in the 1990s, mrfire.com, mrfire.com. It's a portal to everything. Virtually all of my books are on Amazon. So anything that I've done, those 80 or 90 books, whatever, just search my name, either Joe Vitale or Dr. Joe Vitale. You'll find them on Amazon and in bookstores all over the world. And I mentioned Instagram and social media. I think in all cases, I'm Dr. Joe Vitale, Dr. Joe Vitale, and you can follow me there. And I've loved this. These are great questions. I love talking about books and marketing them, and it's a joyful experience to be here. So thank you. And thanks for what you're doing for everybody trying to move ahead.
Yes, sir. Well, there you have it, guys. Check out the books and buy a copy of his book. Check out more about what he's up to. Dr. Joe, you're the man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you could be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Number 2, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number 3, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help this podcast get discovered by other people. So number 3, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode.